After his childhood crush died, Hal decided to become a farmer. Unfortunately, farming gave him incredible powers that made him overpowered. For this reason, he was forced to save humanity from monsters and demons that threaten this world. The story starts with a group of adventurers fighting a very powerful forest dragon. Suddenly, the forest dragon launched an attack and planned to turn his enemies into fried chicken. The group of adventurers decided to run away because they didn't want to be eaten. Then we see a boy named Al. He heard a thunder sound and wondered if it was going to rain. He was a passionate farmer and looked after his eggplants in the fields. Later, his fisherman friend Testa showed up, and Al told him that he has promoted all the farming skills to level 10. Testa was amazed and remembered that his friend Al had also recently promoted his fishing skills to level 10. Then we see a month before, when he was fishing with his best friend. That day, Al managed to catch more fish than Testa, even though he is not a fisherman. Testa congratulated him and was proud to be Al's friend. A few moments later, Al learned that he was able to integrate his farming skills. Al immediately tested the ability, and Testa was surprised because Al's attack power became stronger than a Super Saiyan. Next, Al planned to set off to the royal capital to sell his vegetables. On the way to the royal capital, he heard some noises and looked around. Meanwhile, the adventurer group was still being pursued by the powerful dragon. Al spotted the dragon in the sky and he got a great idea. He looked at his carrot and threw a carrot at the dragon, causing a huge explosion. After this, he realized that his attack power had increased because of his ability to integrate his farming skills. Following this, Al drove off towards the royal capital to deliver the fresh vegetables he had harvested. However, the adventurers were confused and wondered why the powerful forest dragon exploded. A few hours later, Al arrived in the royal capital and he showed a guardian his ID card. Meanwhile, the adventurers found the trails of a carriage and remembered that they saw a flying carrot. Then we see a criminal trying to kidnap a girl. Al didn't hesitate for a second and rushed towards the criminal to save the girl. The kidnapper was angry at Al and took out a short sword to attack him. Al remained calm and he used his judo skills to slam the kidnapper into the ground. At that moment, he realized that his new learned ability, called the power of perception, was quite convenient. Afterwards, the girl thanked him for saving her, and she wanted to know his name. But he was running late because he had to deliver his vegetables. Then we see him at the vegetable market, and he was delivering his freshly harvested vegetables. Al was happy that he was able to deliver his vegetables on time and planned to return to his village. Suddenly, the first Princess Fel of the royal capital Nagus appeared, looking for him. Al was stopped by guards and he was surprised to see the rescued girl again. Fel asked him about his name and she made him a great offer. Al was asked to serve the royal family in the royal capital, but he tried to politely decline the offer and told her that he wanted to remain a farmer. He then tried to run away, but Fel said that she would give him a field of 33,000 square meters if he served the royal family. However, Al asked her why she wanted to recruit him so badly, and he learned about the status system of this world. Also, she told him that the man he defeated had almost the strength of a knight captain, because his power level was over 500. Suddenly, Fel wanted to see his status, but Al knew he was stronger than a legendary hero. At that moment, the three adventurers who had fought against the forest dragon appeared. They reported that in the forest, a person with a carriage had defeated a forest dragon. Al took advantage of this moment and immediately drove back to his village. Meanwhile, Fel realized that Al wasn't a normal farmer and she wasn't going to give up. She planned to convince Al to serve the royal family no matter what. Then Fel was told by a knight that she must return to the royal palace immediately. When Fel and his father arrived at the royal palace, it was reported that swarms of powerful monsters were approaching the kingdom of Magus. So a knight said that it looks like a second coming of Hellzone. The king was shocked at his knight's report because the demon king Macbeth had been defeated by a hero. They also made a peace pact with the demons after their leader was killed. Officer Cecil suspected that not all demons are satisfied with the peace pact and therefore want to take revenge on the humans. Then Officer Cecil suspected that the commander of the first army of the late Demon King's combat unit, Romeo Vanded, was controlling the monsters and planning to attack the kingdom. Also, Officer Cecil said that the attempt to kidnap Princess Fel and the dragon's attack were a distraction. The king was shocked by this, and Officer Cecil said that they didn't have time because the enemy had definitely noticed that the former hero who defeated the Demon King had died. However, he suggested that the king and his daughter Fel should leave the kingdom, because Officer Cecil suspected that the royal family were the target of the demons. But the King of Magus refused to leave the royal capital because he didn't want to abandon his people. At that moment, Officer Cecil said that he admired King Magus, but he didn't want to let King Magus die. Officer Cecil replied that the kingdom would fall if the royal family was killed, but the king remained stubborn. So the knights also began to persuade the king to flee, and they promised that they would protect the people in this kingdom. In the night, Al came home and accidentally destroyed his door because he forgot that his power level had increased. Then he planned to relax a little bit, but his friend Testa knocked on the door. Al opened the door and Testa told him that a horde of monsters was approaching the village. He told Al that they were running out of time and had to leave the village as quickly as possible. Suddenly Suddenly Al planned to see after his vegetables, and Testa said that he will hide in a cave outside the village. A few moments later, he learned that nothing had happened to his vegetables. Then he heard some noises from a horde of monsters, and he hid behind a tree to look after them. He realized that the monsters were heading towards the royal capital. He wasn't sure if he should try to stop the monsters, but Al realized that if the royal capital fell, he would no longer be able to sell his vegetables. We then see Fel and her father, who were escorted by a group of knights. Suddenly, Officer Cecil laughed evilly, and he led the royal family into a dead end. He said that they have arrived at the destination, and he attacked the knights of the royal family. Afterwards, he also attacked King Magus, and they were shocked by it. King Magus was badly injured, and they tried to defeat Officer Cecil. Unfortunately, they were no match for Officer Cecil, and he showed his true identity. Fel and King Magus learned that Officer Cecil was Romeo Vanded all along. They were shocked that Officer Cecil was a demon, and a knight was trying to kill him. Unfortunately, the knight was killed instantly, and Romeo looked down on the king. Romeo said that his plan was to make Fel his Juliet, and that he wanted to have 8 children with her. Because of this, he tried to kidnap Fel, but his plan failed. Then Romeo said that he planned to rule the kingdom out of revenge, and he showed Fel that he had a transformation skill. Fel was shocked because he could not only take on her father's appearance, but also copy her father's voice. Then Romeo transformed back, and he attacked the king and Fel with a powerful spell. The king managed to activate his guardian shield spell in time, but Romeo was stronger. Fel immediately began supporting her father, and activated the same spell as her father. Suddenly, Romeo laughed, and he began to activate another spell that destroyed the guardian shield spell. Fel was in trouble, and she didn't know what to do. Romeo asked Fel if she would like to be his wife, but Fel refused, and her father no longer had the strength to maintain his magic. So Romeo managed to destroy the guardian shield spell, and cast his overdarkness spell. At the last moment, the strongest farmer in the world appeared. Al used his secret art underground excavation skill to stop the enemy spell. At the same time, he also attacked the enemy and split the ground. Fel was surprised to see the guy who had saved her from the kidnapper. Then Romeo asked who he was, and Al replied that he was an ordinary farmer. He was shocked and didn't believe Al because he managed to dodge the moves of a strong demon. Al said it's because he eats fresh vegetables that he grew himself every day. He mentioned how proud he was of the eggplants he had harvested this morning, because they were very rich in vitamins and nutrients. Romeo became angry and he planned to attack Al with his sword, but Al managed to block the attack and he threw Romeo into a stone wall. Romeo was impressed, and he planned to show his true form. He absorbed his allies and received a power-up. As a result, Romeo turned into a scary demon whom we could see that he never skipped chess day. Al was impressed after seeing Romeo's muscles, but he wasn't jealous because he knew he didn't need that much muscle to get some girls. Meanwhile, Fel was worried about Al because Romeo's stats had tripled and he was level 78. Al wasn't afraid because he got the power of a Super Saiyan and his power level was over 9,000. So he punched Romeo in the stomach and showed him that he was a reincarnated Mike Tyson. Romeo was knocked out, and his allies were terrified. After Romeo was defeated, Al planned to beat up the remaining demons, but Romeo's allies had disappeared. As a result, King Magus and his daughter Fel were saved, and they were relieved. The next day, King Magus thanked Al for defeating Demon General Romeo and his allies. Al said he doesn't have to thank him, because he only did it to protect his vegetables. Afterwards, King Magus asked if Al could serve the royal family. Al remembered the day Fel made him the same offer. Fel already suspected that Al would refuse to serve her family. Despite everything, she wanted to give Al a 33,000 square meter field. Then she asked Al to register in the guild in return. He also learned that many people near the kingdom are still under threat from monsters. For this reason, Al decided to register in the guild and accepted Fel's deal. Later, he looked at his 33,000 square meter field and realized that he had been given a wasteland as a gift. A few days passed, and Al was shown around the royal capital by Princess Fel. He had a lot of fun and loved the market square of the royal capital because they sold vegetables there. He then bought 2 grilled skewers with the delicious bell peppers he had previously delivered. He learned that the meat skewers were delicious and planned to buy more later. Suddenly, Al asked Princess Fel if her being as a princess in this place and showing him around the capital wouldn't cause any problems. She replied that it wasn't a problem that she wasn't in the royal palace, because her maid Albie was acting as her body double. Al was surprised by this, and Princess Fel discovered delicious sweets that she wanted to try immediately. After purchasing her sweets, Fel led him to the Adventurers Guild in the royal capital. Suddenly, Al told her that he doesn't want to become an adventurer who fights monsters and would rather continue to be an ordinary farmer. But Fel reminded him of the promise he had made to her when he accepted the gift of 33,000 square meters of fields. Before they entered the guild, Al thought that the adventurers would immediately recognize her as a princess, but she explained that her hair decoration was imbued with deception magic, so she won't be found out by other people. Al then entered the Adventurers Guild, and the guildmaster welcomed him. He had already heard rumors about Al's exploits, how he had defeated the demon Romeo Van Ded. Following this, Al was taken to receptionist Helen to register as an adventurer. Helen welcomed him to the Adventurers Guild, but at that moment his stomach began to growl loudly. She served him an apple pie from the Cheesecake Factory, and Al thanked her for providing him with a meal. Then Al was asked why he wanted to become an adventurer, and he couldn't say that Fell had given him a farmland in return, so he told Helen that his occupation is farmer, and he planned to be an adventurer as a side job. Suddenly, the three adventurers who had fought the forest dragon a few days before appeared. They were surprised to see Al, who had defeated an S-rank dragon with one hit. Meanwhile, the other adventurers in the guild also became aware of him because they had already heard the rumors. Al didn't want to draw attention to himself and said he was just an ordinary farmer. The three adventurers then introduced themselves, and Al learned that their names are Jake, Luke, and Lamia. Suddenly, Lamia said that she runs OnlyFans, and she wanted to offer Al a discount. Al politely declined, but Lamia didn't even listen to him. Meanwhile, Helen was impressed by Al and immediately understood that Al was an impressive guy. Afterwards, Al wanted to accept a quest, and the guild's ranking system was explained to him. He learned that each quest requires a specific rank. Helen was confident that Al could become an S-rank adventurer in no time, but Al had no intention of becoming an S-rank adventurer because otherwise he wouldn't have time to harvest his vegetables. After this, Al was shown a G-rank quest and learned that to complete the quest, he would have to gather 10 stalks of maltgrass from the Forest of Grimm. Helen explained to him that maltgrass is an important item for making healing potions. Before Al set out on his first quest, Helen gave him a robe that was imbued with magical power. Al tried to politely decline, but Helen insisted on giving him the robe. Suddenly, Helen started to fall in love with Al because the robe really suited him. Al knew he got Farmer Riz, but he acted like he didn't know about it. Then he thanked Helen for the robe, and at the same time, he realized that his plan to live an ordinary life as a farmer was starting to become more difficult. Helen was happy that Al liked the robe and wished him good luck on his first quest. Next, he planned to head to the Forest of Grimm, and he said goodbye to Fell. Before she left, Al learned that she planned to hang out with him again tomorrow. A few hours later, Al was only missing one stack of maltgrass to complete his first quest. Suddenly, he found a scale and took a closer look at it. He wondered which monster it came from, and learned that only orcs live in this forest. At that moment, a female orc appeared behind him and wanted to make a baby with him. He had been terribly afraid, but Jake showed up and saved him from the female orc. Al was glad that he was saved from the female orc's perverted games. Afterwards, he thanked Jake, and he asked Al if he was okay. Meanwhile, Jake's comrades also showed up and were surprised to see Al in the forest. Al said he found a scale in the woods. Jake replied that this scale is from an unidentified monster. However, he told Al about the rumors that the scale he found came from a black dragon, but black dragons only live in high-altitude watering holes. He also told Al that so far no one has actually seen the dragon. Shortly afterwards, Jake asked if Al was able to complete his quest, and he said he still needed to find another stalk of maltgrass. Suddenly, the ground shook, and they felt a dark aura in the forest. Al was shocked and wondered if it came from a monster. Then we see a black dragon appear that looked like the Red Eyes dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! The monster walked past them while they couldn't move in fear. They felt that the black dragon was in a different league and that they had no chance of defeating him. Al used his appraisal skill and looked at the dragon's status. When he looked at the dragon's status, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. At the same time, Helen woke up from a nightmare because she dreamed of being chased by something. Helen had no memories of her childhood and did not know what her dream meant. The next morning, her adoptive mother noticed that Helen wasn't looking so well, and she asked her what had happened. Helen said it looked like she had lost her memory again, and she didn't remember anything from yesterday when she went home. Wong was worried about Helen and suspected that she was exhausted from working non-stop. Suddenly, Al returned to the guild, and he planned to tell Helen about the encounter with the Black Dragon. Jake then explained that Al used his appraisal skill to determine that the Black Dragon they encountered had an attack power of 230,000. They were shocked by this and suspected that it was the legendary malevolent dragon Ouroboros. Meanwhile, Helen almost collapsed when she heard the name Ouroboros. Everyone was worried about her, but she said she was fine. Then Jake and his friends reported that the malevolent dragon passed by them without stopping and quickly disappeared. However, Jake thought it would be best to close off the Forest of Grimm right away. Al then showed the guildmaster a scale that he had found in the Forest of Grimm. The sight of this scale made Helen's heart rate increase, and she remembered some of her lost memories. At that moment, the memory of her little brother being eaten by Ouroboros came back. She fainted because she couldn't bear the pain of remembering the day her little brother died. Everyone in the room was worried about Helen, and she started to get a fever. A few moments later, Al learned that Helen was fine and in bed. He learned that Wong was Helen's adoptive parent. Following this, Al introduced himself, and Wong was surprised to see that Al was wearing a black robe. He told Wong that he had received the robe from Helen. Shortly afterwards, Wong said that Helen doesn't have her memories of when she was little. Wong said she found Helen collapsed on the banks of the Snooze River 15 years ago. She learned that Helen only remembered her name, and it seemed that she had no relatives. However, Wong wondered if the amnesia had a connection to the dragon Ouroboros. Al wanted to investigate the matter and planned to defeat the malevolent dragon, but Wong said that he shouldn't do anything stupid, and that he can't do anything as a G-rank adventurer. Al told her that she didn't need to worry about him, because he just wanted to look for information about Ouroboros in the library. He also told her that he wanted to help Helen to find out why she doesn't remember her past. Wong understood that Al is a kind-hearted boy, and she gave him recovery potions. Before Al searched for information about the malevolent dragon Ouroboros, Wong asked him to let her know if he found out anything. In the afternoon, Al was delivered a letter from Postman Reeks, and he was surprised by it. Al learned that the letter was from his mother, and he wondered how she found out that he had moved to the royal capital. Al thanked him, and Reeks wished him a nice day. Afterwards, Al sought information about the malevolent dragon Ouroboros in order to defeat the dragon. Al couldn't believe that the dragon had an attack power of 230,000. He remembered that an SS rank hero might have had 1,000 attack power, and the demon Romeo Vanded he defeated had 5,000 attack power. Al was surprised that a monster is stronger than him because he got an attack power of 63,000, which is similar to the power of a Super Saiyan. At this moment, he remembered that Wong had found Helen 15 years ago, so he asked the librarian whether there were any damage reports that occurred near the Snooze River 15 years ago. But Al was told it was a rule that only people of a specific rank and above may have access to read the damage reports. He was frustrated and asked the librarian to make an exception, but she remained stubborn. Meanwhile, Princess Fel showed up, and Al was surprised to see her. Fel had the authority to allow Al permit on the damage reports, so they were led to a special room that contained many books that only high-ranking authority figures had access to. Fel asked Al what he was looking for, and he told him that he wanted to find damage reports from over 15 years ago near the Snooze River. At that moment, she remembered a damage report from the village of Honol and showed him a book. Then Fel learned that Al was looking for the information to help a person in need. However, Al learned that the village of Honol was destroyed and scales were found at that location. In the end, it was concluded that the scale could belong to the malevolent dragon Ouroboros, who died long time ago. Then it was said that the dragon ingests ruin and despair to live long. Also, it was said that it was an immortal presence. But due to the battle with its only natural enemy, the benevolent dragon Mirage, it was put to death. Al understood that with the resurrection of Ouroboros, humanity was in danger. For this reason, he planned to head out to the village to investigate, and Fel wanted to accompany him. The next morning, they set out to visit the destroyed village of Honol. When they arrived, Fel showed Al the way to the destroyed village. A few moments later, they arrived in the village of Honol, and Al heard a voice calling him to him. Al had a feeling that he should follow the voice and investigated. Suddenly, a little ghost boy appeared wearing the same robe as him. Fel was confused because Al was talking to himself. He replied that he was talking to the child in front of him, but she couldn't see the child. Al realized that the child in front of him was a ghost, and his name was Ray. Meanwhile, Helen woke up, and she looked out the window because she got a strange feeling. Afterwards, Ray noticed that Al was wearing the same robe. Al told Ray that he had received the robe from a person named Helen, and Ray was surprised about it. He said that it once belonged to him, and that it's a special item imbued with defensive magic that he got from his father. Suddenly, Al put the robe over Fel's shoulder, and she misunderstood something. Then she noticed the ghost in front of her, and she was frightened. Meanwhile, Ray said he's glad to learn his sister is still alive. Al was surprised by this, and asked the ghost if he was Helen's little brother. He answered yes, and revealed to Al that Helen was also the only survivor of this village. Shortly afterwards, Ray learned that his big sister no longer had any memories of her past. He suspected that it was because she had experienced an event that was too painful, and in order to protect her own mind, she sealed the memories of her past away. As a result, Ray suspected that this could lead to a big problem, that she sealed the painful memories away, and he begged Al to save his sister. Below, we see the village 15 years ago, and everything was still peaceful back then. At that day, Helen went to look for his little brother in the forest to let him know that lunch was being prepared. Ray trained with the sword because he wanted to become a strong hero one day. Suddenly, he tripped over a stone, and his sister was worried about him. Helen told her to stop playing hero because it's dangerous. He replied that he was not playing but training hard to become stronger because he planned to save many people's lives one day. He also said that she doesn't have to worry, but Helen replied that she was his big sister and she didn't want him to get hurt. Shortly afterwards, the malevolent dragon appeared in this village, and the sky was enveloped in a dark mist. Ouroboros caused chaos in the village and destroyed the village's houses with his dangerous fire breath. Helen and her brother saw smoke rising from the direction of their village. They immediately ran back to the village and were shocked to find their house destroyed. Helen was worried about their parents, and Ray spotted the huge dragon flying in the sky. Following this, they ran into the village to look for their parents and hid behind a half-destroyed wall. Meanwhile, Ouroboros had targeted a woman with her 2 children. The son tried to protect his frightened family and threw a stone at the enemy. Ouroboros was angry because he showed no fear, and he taught the family to fear by using his dragon's roar. Helen wanted to help them, but Ray knew it would mean their death, and covered Helen's mouth. Meanwhile, the bad breath of Ouroboros was hitting the soul of the family, and he killed them to get some life energy for himself. He absorbed the energy of fear into his body, and Ray knew that they would not be able to save the villagers because it would be too dangerous. He regretted that he wasn't stronger and was angry because as a small child he can't do anything in this desperate situation while the villagers are being killed. Helen wanted to help their family and friends, but Ray made it clear to her that they couldn't do anything against such a powerful beast. So they started running away from the dragon and managed to get into the forest. Suddenly Helen stopped, and Ray told her that they didn't have much time, so he wondered why she stopped at such a crucial moment. The reason for this was that she could smell Ouroboros' bad mouth and was paralyzed by it. At that moment, Ouroboros blocked their path, and he had no intention of letting them escape. Ray grabbed his sister, and the evil dragon tried to scare them as much as possible. Could have easily killed them. Instead, he played with them as if they were toys. A few moments later, Helen was tired and stumbling on her own feet. She understood that her brother would manage to survive without her, and for this reason, she told her little brother to leave her behind. At the same time, the dragon landed behind her and had fun chasing her like the toys from Toy Story. Then Ouroboros planned to devour Helen and absorb her soul, which was filled with fear. But Ray had no intention of abandoning his beloved sister and threw a sword at the enemy. He managed to injure Ouroboros, but his sword did no harm to the dragon. At the same time, Ouroboros became angry and looked down on Ray. He said that he is overpowered and his toy knife can't hurt him. As a result, Ouroboros decided to eat Ray first, and Ray shouted to his sister that she should run away. Then Ray was mortally wounded by the black dragon's sharp teeth. Helen was traumatized and didn't want to accept that her little brother was dying. She took him on her lap, but Ray told her to run because he didn't want that her sister would be killed too. The black dragon Ouroboros just laughed and looked down on Ray. He enjoyed the sight of Helen's desperate expression. As a result, he planned to let her alive and return in 15 years to eat her soul. Meanwhile, Ray wanted to protect her sister, and he said that he will stop Ouroboros' plan and defeat him somehow. At that moment, Ouroboros decided not to absorb Ray's soul. The black dragon allowed Ray's soul to remain in this land so that Ray could watch him kill Helen in 15 years. Afterwards, Ouroboros disappeared and just laughed as he was excited about eating Helen in 15 years. Then Ray swore with his last breath that he would protect Helen at all cost, and he died as a brave hero. Back in the present, Al and Fel were shocked by this sad past that Helen had experienced. Then Ray said that before his death, the memories of Ouroboros somehow flowed into him when the dragon fatally injured him with his teeth. Ray told Al that when Ouroboros destroys villages, he always leaves one person alive, and that person spreads the story of Ouroboros. After 15 years passed, he visits the person to eat the soul and repeats this process. In addition, he said that Ouroboros feeds on people's fear, and that this increases his power. Al wanted to save Helen, but he knew that he was no match for the black dragon. At that moment, Ray said that there was a way to defeat Ouroboros, and he suspected that Ouroboros' weak point is that he needs the negative energy of souls to live. Al was surprised by this information and realized that he might be able to defeat the legendary malevolent dragon with the opposite energy. Ray was sure that this was the key to victory, and Al planned to use this knowledge to save Helen. However, Al immediately grabbed Fel and ran back to the capital at enormous speed. 10 minutes later, they arrived at the entrance to the royal capital, and Fel was surprised by Al's overwhelming physical strength. Then Fel decided to evacuate the people in the capital with the royal army, and she told Al to take care of Helen. In the meantime, Long checked on Helen, but she wasn't in her room. She was very worried about her adopted daughter and wondered where she had gone. We then see Helen walking into the woods with a knife, looking like she's had too much purple drink, but she was hypnotized by the unique ability of the black dragon Ouroboros. Besides, she didn't know what she was doing and was just following the voice in her head. Suddenly, Ouroboros appeared in front of her, and she realized that she had dreamed about her little brother a few days ago. At that moment, she remembered her past again and was distressed to see Ouroboros. She wondered how she could forget that her brother had died and blamed herself for his death. Suddenly, Ouroboros made her despair even more, saying that this tragedy will happen again, and it's all her fault. This caused the negative energy in Helen's soul to grow, and Ouroboros became aroused like some perverts with fetishes. Then she told the dragon to take her life and asked him to spare her friends in return. Ouroboros started to absorb the negative energy to become stronger. He then said that he won't spare anyone, and Helen was shocked by that. At the same time, Fel had already evacuated the people of the royal capital, and she hoped that Al would be able to defeat the black dragon. Then we see Helen again, and she despairs even more because her brother sacrificed his life, and she was ashamed that it was for nothing. After that, Ouroboros attempted to kill her and used his hypnosis skill to control her mind. So she planned to kill herself with the knife, but Al stopped her. Al was glad he showed up in time and was able to prevent her from taking her own life. Suddenly, Ouroboros attacked him and Al was smashed into a tree. Helen regained her senses and Al survived the attack because of the magical robe. Ouroboros was angry, and he couldn't believe that a human could survive his attack. Meanwhile, Helen didn't want Al to die, but he didn't plan on running away. He ran towards Ouroboros and hit him with his almighty farming punch. As a result, Ouroboros fell down, and he told Helen that he came here to save her. Ouroboros' pride was hurt, and he understood that Al is not an ordinary person. Afterwards, Al looked at his opponent's stats, and he knew the fight had just begun. He told Helen that he would protect her, and these words reminded her of her little brother. She was surprised that Al said to her the same words that her little brother said to her before he died. She was relieved by these words, and she believed that Al will defeat the dragon. However, the fight began, and Al was tackled by his opponent. Al dodged the attacks, trying not to get hit by Ouroboros' claws. Then Al used his almighty punch again, and he managed to hit him. Ouroboros didn't intend to lose, and he realized that Al is stronger than he expected, so he increased his power level again. Suddenly, Ouroboros used his tail and managed to stomp Al into the ground. He didn't stop attacking, and Al somehow tried to withstand the attacks of his powerful opponent. After Ouroboros used his fire breath, Al was thrown away by the explosion. Helen was worried about him, but he was not yet defeated. Al wasn't about to give up, and Ouroboros attacked again with his fire breath. He managed to dodge in time while Helen didn't know what to do. She didn't want to lose another loved one and told him to run away instead of protecting her. Al grabbed her hand and said that she was not responsible for the deaths of her family and the people of her village. Also, he told her that he promised Ray to protect his big sister and defeat the Black Dragon, who destroyed their village. That's when Helen remembered her little brother's words as they ran away from Ouroboros. Al then told her about Ouroboros' weakness and how they can defeat him. Helen regained hope, and she no longer blamed her for the deaths of her family and friends. As a result, Ouroboros began to lose his enormous strength, and Al was glad that his plan worked. The Black Dragon was shocked by this, and Al planned to defeat the dragon at any cost. Suddenly, Ouroboros started complaining and shouted to Al, "Black Lives Matter." He thought that Al wanted to kill him because he was a black dragon and not a white one. Al was called a racist, but Al replied that he was not a racist because he was half Mexican himself. Ouroboros said that he was lying, and he didn't plan to let them win. So he prepared his next attack, and he rushed towards Al to kill him with his last strength. But Al countered with an uppercut and was able to defeat the dragon with the ability he learned from his uncle Mike Tyson. After the enemy was defeated, Helen asked Al if he was okay. He replied that he was unhurt, but Helen was acting very odd. Suddenly, she stabbed Al's stomach with a knife, and he was confused. He wondered why Helen had stabbed him, and she smiled evilly. However, Al tried to drink some slurp juice, but the potion fell to the ground. Then Helen started attacking him, and Al was confused. He asked Helen why she was trying to kill him. Helen ignored the question, and Al tried to heal his wound. Suddenly, she attacked again, but Al was protected. Ouroboros, who had taken possession of Helen's body, was shocked because the benevolent dragon Mirage had been resurrected. At this crucial moment, Al was sure that it was a blue-eyes white dragon and not a benevolent dragon. Next, Mirage told Al that Ouroboros was in Helen's body. Unwilling to let his enemy win, Mirage gave Al his powers. Al received a power-up to become stronger than Truck-kun, but this also drained Mirage's life force. In the meantime, Fel had evacuated her kingdom and planned to defend her land against Ouroboros if Al didn't manage to stop the enemy. Mirage then revealed to Al how he could save Helen, and he was told to beat up Helen in order to save her. Ouroboros thought that Al would never harm Helen because she was important to him. But Al was John Cena, so he punched Helen in the stomach without hesitation. Ouroboros was angry, but Al could see in his eyes that Helen was into this sort of thing. She said with her eyes that she liked being treated like a punching bag, and he should hit her like he was in a Creed movie. Afterwards, he looked at her and he felt guilty. However, Helen informed him that she liked being beaten as long as he could defeat Ouroboros. A few moments later, Al thought that Helen was back to normal. Suddenly, Ouroboros left Helen's body and he identified as Danny Phantom to enter Al's body like a ghost. Ouroboros laughed at Mirage and was sure he had won. Suddenly, he realized something was wrong and he learned that Al was a freaky farmer. He saw in Al's mind that he was only thinking about farming. However, with this passion, he managed to throw Ouroboros out of his body. Ouroboros felt like an OnlyFans girl thrown out onto the streets. At that moment, Mirage stood up, and he became Ouroboros' pimp. He activated his pimp power and banished the little sissy from this world. As a result, the world was saved and Mirage thanked Al for his efforts. Then the sun shone and the dark clouds disappeared. In the evening, Al woke up and both of his girls were happy. He learned he was in the guild and Fel hugged him. Next, Al told Helen that they won against the evil dragon, but Mirage disappeared because his power was used up for the purification. Al also learned that Helen was fine, but she had been given a power-up. She became the Isekai Danny Phantom, but instead of ghost powers, she gained dragon powers. Al and Fel were impressed because Helen could now partially transform into a dragon. After the dragon transformation trick, Al wondered if she had different pronouns now and wanted to know what she identifies as. Helen replied that she was still a girl and she was grateful that Al had saved her. Following this, Helen wanted to know what relationship Al and Fel held. Since Fel was in disguise, she told Helen that they were childhood friends. A few moments later, Helen's family and friends showed up and they were happy that Helen was healthy. They thanked Al and were impressed that he had defeated a legendary evil beast. Suddenly Wong said that Al needed rest, but Al replied that he was fine. However, they planned to celebrate the victory and Fel had a great idea. She wanted to give Al a reward and almost revealed her identity as a princess. A few hours later, the guildmaster began to make a toast to celebrate Al. Al was enjoying the lemon juice and Luke told Al that he should drink alcohol, but he wanted to go harvest the potatoes tomorrow and Fel read his thoughts. She also thanked him again for saving her country. In addition, she talked about how worried she was, but she had believed in him the whole time. Then we see Helen showing her friends her new isekai Danny Phantom tricks. The next morning, Testa helped Al harvest vegetables. He wondered if it was tiring for Al to take care of his fields in the village in the royal capital. As Al was about to answer, Reeks showed up and handed him a letter. He learned that Reeks was a pro stalker and always knew Royale was. Afterwards, Al found out that the letter was from his father. Al's father wrote that he was doing well and that he thought it was great that Al had moved to the royal capital. He then asked Al to visit him and Testa said that he can take care of Al's vegetable fields. The next day, Al walked past a vegetable stand. He discovered a tomato that tasted like a smash burger. Al asked the shopkeeper where the tomato came from. However, he was so excited and told the shopkeeper about his own vegetable farm. Alvin learned that the tomatoes came from Gotham City, and he went to the guild. He told Helen that he was going to Gotham City, and she was shocked about it. Then she was told that he planned to visit his parents, but the real reason was to buy tomatoes there. Afterwards, Al learned that Helen planned to take over his accepted quest. She told him that she became a F-rank adventurer since she received the dragon abilities. Next, Al left the guild and his sugar mommy showed up. Fel thought he was going on an adventure, but she found out that he was planning to visit his parents and she wanted to accompany him to the trip. Al knew Fel was stubborn and he ran out of town. When Al was in the forest, he sensed danger and an orc appeared. He was startled and realized it was Shrek's uncle. Shrek's uncle was into guys and wanted to do nasty things with Al. Al said he didn't want to pick up the soap, but it was too late. At the last moment before Shrek's uncle could diddy Al, he was defeated and a blue-haired girl appeared in front of him. Despite his rescue, Al got an emotional damage and the girl was worried after seeing him traumatized. She gave him some purple drink to calm himself down. Afterwards, Al said that he is an adventurer, and for some reason orcs have always been trying to seduce him. Following this, the girl introduced herself and Ruri was pleased to meet Al. However, she learned that Al was traveling to Gotham City and she planned to accompany him. She was also on her way to Gotham City and Al wondered if she would mind traveling with a man. She made a joke and Al learned a terrible side of Ruri. Next, Al learned that she had no problem traveling with a man because she thought no man would be interested in her. Al replied that she was cute and he unintentionally rizzed her up. Afterwards, they headed to Gotham City and Ruri was motivated. In the evening, Ruri sensed something in the forest and thought that a monster was approaching. They prepared for battle, but Al realized it wasn't a monster. Reeks had a letter that was supposed to be delivered to Al. Al couldn't believe he could even find him in the forest. However, Al was annoyed by his mommy because she sent him 3 to 4 letters every day. After that, Al told Ruri the reason why he planned to visit Gotham City. She learned about the delicious tomatoes, which tasted like smash burgers. A few moments later, Al asked about her family and she looked sad because she doesn't have any. Then she pulled out a huge tent from her item box. Al was surprised and learned that she had inherited the item box from her ancestor. Next, they cooked dinner and Al was amazed that she was wifey material. He raved about her cooking skills and asked her why she wanted to go to Gotham City. This is how Al found out that she wanted to go to Gotham City to become stronger. She also heard a rumor that a demon named Joker had appeared in Gotham City. She wanted to investigate this matter and protect the residents there. Suddenly, Ruri told Al that she was a descendant of the legendary hero. Al was surprised by this and he became worried after hearing that she planned to fulfill her duty as a hero. She was happy to hear that he was worried about her and she blushed. Then Ruri suggested that they should go to sleep, so Al planned to sleep on the bare ground. But Ruri said that there was enough space in her tent. Following this, Ruri told Al that she had always wanted to talk to someone before going to sleep. Al wanted to fulfill her wish, but Ruri had already fallen asleep. Next, he planned to go to sleep too, but Ruri gave him a roundhouse kick while he was trying to sleep. The next morning, they arrived in Gotham City and Al was injured. Al then took off his bandage and told Ruri that his day job was farming. A few moments later, they arrived in Gotham City and Al said goodbye. Ruri said she had a lot of fun. Al understood what she wanted to say and he replied that he would ask her as an armed escort on the way back. She was happy and gave her the address in the hotel where she is staying. Later, she asked a woman about the rumors of the demon sighting. The woman couldn't help Ruri and Ruri couldn't find any trace of the demon. That's when she remembered being called useless. Suddenly a woman screamed and Ruri immediately ran to her. The woman told Ruri that the demon had fled into the forest and kidnapped her sister. Ruri ran into the forest and a mysterious man was watching her. In the evening, Al stood in front of his parents' house and his mother jumped out of the house. She was stronger than a Super Saiyan and almost destroyed the city while showing her son how much she missed him. She also broke Al's back and he thought he was going to die. Al knew that his mother was a great person, good at cooking, nice and pretty. But unfortunately, she was too overprotective that she almost killed Al many times. While Al was being hugged, his father appeared. He thought that someone had tried to seduce his wife and hit Al. Suddenly, Lushika became angry because her husband had beaten their son. Al's father was punished and he apologized for the misunderstanding. In the evening, Lushika cooked Al his favorite meal. Then we see his dad, who was served burnt chicken extra crispy and he wasn't allowed to eat at the table. Following this, Lushika asked Al about Ruri and his father was happy that Al had found a girlfriend. Al's mom was angry because she didn't want to let Al have another wife and started beating her husband. Al knew that this would happen and explained to his mommy that Ruri was just his armed escort. Afterwards, his father thanked Al for saving him. Al told his father that he was looking for tomatoes that tasted like smash burgers. So Al's dad told him where to find the tomatoes and he found something strange about the map Al showed him. Al learned that the hotel where Ruri was staying didn't even exist. Afterwards, Al wanted to go to sleep and he took his father's bed because his mom acting like a stepmom in his room. The next morning, Al had bought his beloved tomatoes. Suddenly, a man screamed that he was being attacked by a demon. The man told Al that the demon escaped into the forest of illusion and fought against a blue-haired girl. Al ran into the woods and the attacked man began to smile. Additionally, he dissolved his illusion spell because Al had fallen into his trap. A few moments later, a woman screamed and she was attacked by a giant worm. Al came to the rescue and repelled the monster's attack. Suddenly, he wondered why the attack hadn't felt real. However, the rescued woman jumped into his arms and thanked him. After this, the rescued woman turned into a monster and tried to eat Al, but Ruri was able to prevent it, and she defeated the monster. Al learned that Ruri had been fighting magical beasts in the forest all along. Then the man who lured Al and Ruri into a trap appeared. However, he asked them if they didn't find it strange that none of the residents in Gotham City knew about a demon. Ruri realized that this man was the demon who had tricked her and couldn't believe that she was fooled. Following this, Loki introduced himself and he intended to kill Ruri. However, she wanted to know why Loki was targeting Al too. Loki said that Al was the biggest threat because he managed to defeat Ouroboros and the former Demon King's army first commander Romeo. Al thought that Loki was Romeo's comrade and Ruri charged towards the enemy. Loki deflected the attack with ease and injured her with a Bruce Lee technique. Al healed her immediately and Loki looked down at Ruri. Following this, Al began to attack and his opponent was playing with him. Al couldn't hit the enemy and he got cooked. Ruri was worried about Al, but he survived the explosion. Al then attacked again, but he was again overwhelmed by his opponent. Following this, Loki identified himself as a high school bully and showed Al that he was a weak, ugly loser. Even though he was superior to Al, he was impressed because Al could inflict some scratches on him with his bare fists. While Al healed himself, Loki said that he intended to end the fight. Al didn't give up and he planned to face his bully like in a Disney movie. Suddenly, Loki began to tell his reason why he planned to kill them. So Al learned that Loki was after everyone who was a threat to him, and Al was shocked that his next plan was to eliminate Helm. Next, we see Loki summon two disgusting worms that came from Bikini Bottom. The worms had eaten too many chum buckets and were very aggressive. Al barely managed to protect Ruri, but his guard was down and he was sandwiched. At that moment, Ruri made her move and she covered Al's back. So Al had the chance to launch a counterattack and he managed to wipe out a worm. Suddenly, Ruri played the hero, so she told Al to flee, but he refused to abandon her. However, Al's aura increased by plus infinite, and it resulted that he gained more power to defeat the second worm. In the meantime, Loki was annoyed, and he had watched too much Dragon Ball Super. He attacked with the God of Destruction techniques, but Al managed to dodge the attack. Loki enjoyed the fight against them, and he summoned worms again. As a result, Al and Rory were overwhelmed by the demon Loki, and they were in trouble. Suddenly, Loki said that he had no intention of killing them at first, and that he wanted to capture them as toys. But he changed his mind and used his God of Destruction spell. So Ruri was ashamed because she couldn't move and she thought that she had failed as a hero. At that moment, she remembered her parents' words. They said that Ruri doesn't have to be a hero, but if she wants to be a hero, she should do her best. Loki then planned to launch his attack and fired his destruction ball into the sky. Suddenly, Al freed himself and managed to wipe out the worm with the white powder that the Wall Street guys always consumed. Loki was surprised at this and asked if he was a farmer from Colombian. Al Al then attacked Loki, but he dodged with ease. Al said that he would defeat Loki and protect Ruri. Seeing Al fight gave Ruri courage. She understood that she shouldn't care about other people's opinions and that she shouldn't give up on becoming a hero. At that moment, she decided not to give up to save other people and tried to do her best. However, Al was slowly exhausted, but Ruri stabbed Loki with a sword. Loki said her attack was useless, but she was hyped up to defeat the demon. Suddenly, her magical powers began to increase, and she became able to use the power of the good god. Loki was shocked and tried to escape, but Ruri wouldn't let him get away. He was hit by a powerful magical attack and was wiped out. As a result, Ruri won the fight and Al was impressed. After the fight, Al fell asleep from exhaustion. Ruri was happy to have met Al, and she realized that she had a crush on him. During the night, Al woke up and he was surprised because he was sleeping on Ruri's lap. He apologized because he panicked for a moment and she blushed. Afterwards, Ruri said that she didn't know the way back. Al didn't think it was a big deal and they walked back to Gotham City. On the way back, they heard a voice. Ruri thought it was a ghost and was terrified. The reason for this was that ghosts did not have physical bodies and therefore could not be defeated. A few moments later, the voice became louder and Ruri began to cry. Suddenly, Al realized it was just his mom. Al decided to run away from his mom because he was afraid that Ruri would be killed by her. Following this, Ruri started laughing and she thought that Al was also afraid of ghosts. A few hours later, they arrived in Gotham City and the hotel was gone. Al went home and he remembered worrying his mother when he was young. That time he returned home and she was angry and scolded him for playing until the night. Next, he opened the door and he was ready to be punished by his mother. Suddenly, his mother appeared behind him and he ran away from her. He didn't want to be punished and left his father behind. The next morning, Lushika begged her son not to leave. So Al's dad tried to convince Lushika to let go of their son. But she remained stubborn and Al said that if she didn't let him go today, he wouldn't love her anymore. He wasn't serious, but that was the only way to get her to give in. Shortly after, she said goodbye and she told him not to overdo it. At that moment, Al remembered the day when he did the decision to become a good farmer. Lushika was proud of Al and wished him a safe journey home. Next, Al said goodbye to his dad and he set off. Then we see Ruri, and she was already waiting for Al. On the journey home, Ruri asked if he had any idea why Loki was targeting him. Al replied he didn't know why Loki planned to kill him, but he thanked Ruri for saving him. At that moment, Ruri blushed because Al's aura was plus infinite and they set off. In the evening, we see Fel and she had made a decision that made her daddy very sad. He started crying and apologized for being an incompetent father. A few days passed and Ruri met Helen at the guild. Helen asked about Al's relationship with Ruri and she said that they are friends. Al didn't notice the both of them got a crush on him and the two became rivals. In the afternoon, Al caught a boy stealing his eggplants. The boy apologized and Helen told the boy that he shouldn't do such a thing. Meanwhile, Al was really angry, not because the boy stole vegetables, but because the eggplants weren't ripe yet. The boy apologized to Al and his stomach growled. Al got him a cabbage and said it was right. The boy thanked him, and Al remembered when he offered a girl some food. Then Helen told him that monsters had been attacking a lot of merchants in this area lately. As a result, the poor people hardly have any money for food. Al was worried about this and wanted to do something about the current situation. Suddenly, they heard an alarm and they immediately ran to the walls of the royal capital. The capital was attacked by monsters, and the adventurers tried to stop. A few moments later, Al arrived and Lamia said that the capital would be destroyed if any more monsters appeared. The royal army was motivated and intended to protect their home. Suddenly, Helen transformed into a dragonoid and began supporting the soldiers. She started casting an explosion spell and managed to kill a dragon. Afterwards, a Pokemon from Team Rocket appeared, but Ruri made her move and killed it instantly. Al also made his move and he used his almighty farming tool to wipe out the enemies. They fought side by side and they were cooking. Then we see how many monsters were defeated, but more and more appeared. A few moments later, Al and his friends heard loud noises approaching from the west. He thought that Avatar the Last Airbender had appeared, but it was just an army of another kingdom. The king of Antisburg threatened the monsters to retreat, otherwise they would be slaughtered. Suddenly the monsters started walking into the forest again, and Al was surprised by this. The prince of Antisburg Kingdom announced his victory, and Al thought that the monsters feared the sacred sword of Wakanda. In the evening, Al cleaned his farming tool. Suddenly, Fel knocked on his door. She wanted to say goodbye to Al and told him that she was leaving the kingdom forever. He was shocked that she will never come back. Following this, Maid Albie picked Fel up and told her that the Uber driver planned to drive off. Al was confused and didn't understand why Fel planned to leave her kingdom. He wanted to talk to her, but she just left without turning around to look at him. As she got into the carriage, she said goodbye and thanked Al. A few days passed and Al was happy that the monsters were no longer attacking, but he was still worried about Fel. Afterwards, the boy who stole showed up and his mother apologized to Al. The little boy thought Al's vegetables were delicious and Al learned that his mother owned a clothing brand in town. Then she wanted to buy vegetables from Al and he gave her many different types of vegetables. Next, Reek showed up and Al was surprised to see him. He brought Al a letter from his mommy. Following this, Reek showed him a newspaper article that was troubling Al. Meanwhile, Rory came back from a job and she became Helen's new bestie. At lunch, they learned that Princess Fel was engaged to Prince Netulus. They were surprised that Princess Fel was engaged to the guy who had the sacred sword of Wakanda. After that, Rory found the guy odd, because monsters don't understand humans' words. Meanwhile, Al appeared and he was looking for Philia. Then he showed the girls a letter that his mother had written. He accidentally gave them the wrong letter and they teased him. Next, they learned that the sacred sword of Wakanda was just a fake ordered by Wish. Also, Lushika had met the blacksmith who forged the sword and he told her the truth. As they continued reading the letter, they learned that Al's mom was the former commander of the Shadow Puppets. The girls explained to Al that the Shadow Puppets were a secret organization that was stronger than S-rank adventurers. Afterwards, Helen read the rest and they learned that Prince Netulus was responsible for the monster attacks. Suddenly, Al said that he planned to save Princess Fel and the girls were confused. Al forgot that Fel was always in disguise and almost revealed her secret. Suddenly Reeks appeared and he wanted to help Al with the rescue mission. Then we see the ugly Prince Netulus and many other kings thanked him. The reason for this was that Prince Netulus tricked the other kingdoms too. Everything went according to his plan and many wanted his protection. He was acting like Pablo Escobar and demanded protection money from the other kings. Also, he planned to make the other kingdoms his territory and ordered Gazelle to send more demons to other countries. Gazelle wanted to stop the scam, but Netulus said that he is a top boy, so he slapped Gazelle. However, Netulus threatened to kill Gazelle's wife if he didn't continue sending monsters to the other kingdoms. At that moment, Fel appeared in the room and she was angry because Netulus raised his hand at a servant. Afterwards, a knight showed up and reported to him that the carriage for the ceremony was delayed. Netulus shouted at the knight and ordered him to solve the problem. He then offered Fel champagne and tried to calm her down. She hated the ugly prince because he was a mean person. Meanwhile, Prince Netulus said that he was looking forward to their wedding. The next morning, Al visited an outlet and bought some new off-white clothes. Then we see Reeks and the other girls waiting for Al. Reeks had everything prepared and explained to Al that they could easily enter the kingdom with the carriage. Next, they learned that Reeks won't come with them because he plans to prove that the legendary sword was a fake, and he planned to gather some monsters to expose Prince Netulus. Following this, he revealed that he was a demon, and they were surprised about it. Reeks said that not all demons are evil, and that the demon on Netulus' side is just being blackmailed. Al planned to help the demon and they started the rescue mission. In the night, Fel looked out the window and she wished she could see Al again. The next morning, Netulus was excited because now that he had a queen, he would finally be able to take the throne as the new king of the kingdom Antisburg. Then he walked towards Fao and she was in a wedding dress. He said she looked beautiful and wanted to go to church with her, but she told him to go ahead because she was getting unsure about the wedding. Shortly afterwards, she asked Albie to leave her alone. Fao remembered how her father allowed her to marry any man she wanted, and she didn't have to worry about class. She would have liked to marry Al, but she wanted to sacrifice herself to protect her country. Meanwhile, Al and his friends sneaked into the kingdom of Antisburg, and they managed to enter Tilted Towers without any problems. Al wanted to disguise himself, so he was wearing his new work clothes. Meanwhile, the girls didn't understand why they had to disguise themselves as farmers. Then we find out about Al's plan. He was going to save Gazelle's wife and reveal the lie of the sacred sword. The girls were unsure if his simple plan would work, and a knight appeared, who found them suspicious. Al used his salesman skills and tried to convince the knight that they were ordinary farmers selling fresh vegetables. Unfortunately, his plan failed and they screwed up. As a result, an army full of knights were chasing after them, and Al wondered how his perfect plan could fail. Suddenly, Helen had a great idea and she sent Al flying. So she threw him into the royal palace and wished him good luck. A few seconds later, we see a girl and she was surprised because her room was destroyed. Al apologized and he had a terrible headache. He then asked if she was Gazelle's honey poo. At that moment, guards appeared and they wanted to know who he was. Al replied that he was the farmer warrior and he beat up the guards with vegetables. The The guards had no chance and Al was convinced that the knights were into guys. However, he explained to Gazelle's honey poo that he had come to save her and his lover. Following this, Al planned to escape with Gazelle's girl, but they got a big problem. With a huge iron ball attached to her leg, Al carried her. While escaping from the knights, he met his friends. Next, Al and his friends managed to escape and they found the church. Helen and Rory told Al that he could bark like I show speed to disturb the wedding ceremony. So Al was motivated to save Princess Val at all costs, and his girls wished him good luck. Then the knights appeared again and the two girls planned to stop the soldiers. At the same time, King Magus asked if Val was sure to marry Medalus. She replied that she decided to do so for the good of the kingdom of Magus. King Magus felt guilty because he couldn't defeat the monsters without the help of Nedalus. Afterwards, the priest held the wedding ceremony and Val replied that she wanted to marry Prince Nedalus. Before he kissed her, he promised her that he would make her happy. Val didn't want to marry an arrogant prince and wished that Al would come to save her. At that moment, Al appeared and the door flew towards Nedalus. Val was confused because Prince Nedalus was lying under a door. Al got Farmer Riz and he walked through the door with an aura of plus 30,000. Then Val was very happy to see her favorite farmer, who showed up to save her, and she started crying with joy. Meanwhile, Nedalus wanted to stop Al and he called him a villain. Al said that Nedalus was the villain and his sacred sword was a fake order from Wish. Nedalus started laughing and said that his sword was 100% made in Switzerland. King Magus told Al that he saw Prince Nedalus use his sword to scare away the monsters. Suddenly, Nedalus asked if Al can prove it, and he answered yes. At that moment, a knight appeared and reported that a massive number of monsters were approaching the royal capital. The reason for this was Reeks, who lured monsters into the capital with a magic item. Meanwhile, everyone was frightened and they asked Prince Medalus to scare away the monsters. The prince called Gazelle, but he realized that he was reunited with his honey poo. Next, Reeks brought Nedalus his sacred sword of Wakanda. Nedalus knew that he did not have the power of Wakanda and that fate had not chosen him to be the Black Panther. However, the monsters approached the church and everyone was confused. Then Al threw the sword to the monsters and the other royal families learned that Nedalus was a scammer. Shortly afterwards, Gazelle used his flute and commanded the monster to retreat. He exposed Prince Nedalus and said that he had fooled everyone. King Magus asked him to explain himself, but he started laughing evilly. However, he told them that he had sent an army full of monsters to Magus last night. They were shocked by this, and Gazelle told him to stop capping because it would be impossible to do this without the magical flute. Prince Nedalus said that he didn't need a flute because the monsters were attracted to the corpses he had placed in Magus. Suddenly, Rory and Helen appeared and they said that Magus will not go down. The reason for this was that the adventurers and soldiers of Magus were ready to protect their kingdom. Then the fight against the monsters began, and the monsters were cooked. Meanwhile, Al told Fel that she doesn't have to sacrifice herself. A few moments later, the Knights of Antusberg appeared. They planned to arrest Nedalus because they learned that Nedalus destroyed Tilted Towers. Nedalus was desperate and he tried to assassinate King Magus, but Al stopped his attempt with vegetables and he punched the prince in his face. He was then arrested and taken away by his own knights. Val jumped into Al's arms and everyone was shocked. She said she loves him and Al was surprised at her confession of love. Rory was jealous and wanted to know his relationship with Princess Val. Next, Al thought that Fel's dad would stop his daughter, but he welcomed Al to his family. Following this, Reeks talked to King Magus and he gave him a letter that was sent to Nedalus. King Magus realized that Reeks belonged to the Shadow Puppets, and he said that there was a master behind the scene. Few days passed and Al visited the Adventurers Guild. Then the guildmaster told him to take care of the new quests. Al said he hates to do quests because he just wanted to live an ordinary farmer life and taking care of his fields. Meanwhile, Princess Val showed up and everyone was surprised. She gave the adventurers a huge treasure as a reward for defending the land. When Val left, Helen almost discovered Val's secret. Then Val appeared in disguise and she teased Al a little bit. Next, she made an announcement to Rory that she will win Al's heart. However, a heated battle started and Al went off to check his vegetables. In the afternoon, he was looking at a tomato, but Val and Rory appeared behind him. They asked Al who he loves, but he tried to avoid this question. Suddenly, they asked if Al had feelings for another girl. He replied yes, and they were shocked at that. Next, he brought the vegetables home and dedicated the food to his late childhood friend Ilvia. Then we see the village of Sills 15 years earlier, and Al's dad was harvesting potatoes. As he was about to take a break, he realized that his son had dug up 10 times as many potatoes as he had. Al said he was having a lot of fun and his mother was angry. The reason for this was that she thought her husband had forced their son to do his job. Later, Al gave away some potatoes to his neighbors. Then we see Ilvia, and she was caught by some villagers because she was stealing vegetables. Al learned that she stole because she most likely lived alone and was hungry. In addition, his neighbors suspected that the girl lives in the mountain. Then Ilvia managed to free herself and ran away. While escaping, she stole the potatoes that Al gave to his neighbors. A few hours later, Ilvia ate the potato and Al visited her to bring her food. She ran away in fear, but Al asked her to stop for a moment. He said he didn't plan to take away the potatoes and wanted to show her that the soup he had brought was delicious. She was scared, so Al put the soup on the ground so she could eat in privacy. The next morning, Al visited Ilvia again in the mountains and left on the ground a homemade egg dish with ketchup. She was happy about it and ate it immediately. The following day, Al realized that Ilvia was no longer afraid of him. Ilvia seemed very happy and Al was glad that she liked the secret sauce on the sandwich. Then Al said that he harvested the vegetables with his father and he was happy to see her smile. Afterwards, she learned Al's name and Al's stomach growled. Ilvia was a very kind-hearted girl and decided to share her sandwich with Al. At that moment, some villagers appeared and they planned to punish Ilvia. Al asked them to forgive Ilvia and said that he would do anything to make up for the stolen vegetables. He promised that he would grow a lot of vegetables. But the villagers did not want to forgive Ilvia. At that moment, Al's dad appeared and he asked what was going on. The villagers said they planned to sell Ilvia to a slave trader, but Al's dad didn't allow it and gave them his goods to compensate for the losses caused by Ilvia. Afterwards, Al asked if it was a problem that his dad had handed the rice to the guys. Suddenly, Ilvia wanted to thank Al for saving him and she gave Al back the potato she had stolen. Al's dad had an idea and he said that their family couldn't manage to eat this large amount of potatoes by themselves. Al understood what his father wanted to do and he asked Ilvia if she wanted to live with them. 2 years later, we learned that Ilvia became Al's little sister. She wanted to have lunch with Al, but he said that he still has to take care of the other fields. She was angry because she wanted to spend time with Al. However, Al said that she should play with other children in the village, but she refused. Following this, Testa appeared and a group of killer bees were chasing him. Testa didn't know what to do because he didn't have a Pikachu that could defeat the killer bees. Suddenly, Lushika showed up and defeated all of the killer bees with her Bruce Lee moves. Testa was saved and he made Al's dad angry because he started complimenting Lushika. Then Lushika asked Al to take care of their home because they planned to visit the royal capital to find a bigger house. Ilvia felt guilty because she knew that she was the reason for this. Next, Al asked his friend why he was being attacked by wild Pokemons. He showed Al a map and thought they could use it to find Gold Roger's treasure, the One Piece. So Testa asked Al to help him find the treasure and said that he might find a jewel as a gift for Ilvia. Ilvia wanted to accompany Al on the treasure hunt, but he didn't want to put her in danger and told her to stay in the village. In the forest, Al wondered why Ilvia never wanted to play with other children in the village. Testa told him that the other kids bullied her and that's why she only wanted to play with Al. At that moment, he understood why his parents were looking for a bigger house in the royal capital. Next, the map led them to the mountains and Testa stepped on a stone that led to a secret entrance into a cave. They found a ruin and were surprised by it. Next, he touched a stone tablet which immediately began to glow. Al could see a dark monster that began to devour his mind. In addition, the volcano near the village of Sills erupted. When Al woke up, Ilvia was very relieved because he had slept for a very long time. Then he felt a pain in his chest and Testa appeared. Testa told him that after he collapsed, the volcano erupted. The village was covered in ash and the fields were destroyed. Then they learned that the bridge over the river had collapsed. As a result, they were unable to escape the village and had any food left. However, he looked around and couldn't believe what had happened to their village. Also, he looked at their fields and was shocked to see that everything was destroyed. Suddenly, he felt a pain in his chest and before he collapsed, he asked her if she was hungry. In the night, Ilvia snuck into the mayor's tent because she planned to steal food for Al, but she remembered how Al had stood up for her. She knew that stealing was wrong and decided to leave the tent. The next day, Ilvia gave Al her portion so that he would regain his strength. Al thought there was hardly any food, but Ilvia lied to him and kept quiet about the fact that he ate her serving. She said food suppliers were arriving from the royal capital. Afterwards, she said that she had already eaten and that she was looking forward to eating Al's grown vegetables again soon. In the days that followed, Ilvia continued to give her serving to Al, even though she was hungry too. After many days passed, she no longer had any strength left and collapsed from hunger. Then we see Al, who woke up and Testa told him about Ilvia's fate. He immediately ran to check on Ilvia, and Testa told him that she was dying of malnutrition. Then he learned that Ilvia was lying to him and that there were no food suppliers in the village. He couldn't believe that she died and he started to cry. A few days later, his parents returned and Al blamed himself for Ilvia's death. Back in the present, he wished that Ilvia could eat his delicious tomatoes. A few weeks later, Al took a quest and he fought a dragon. After he finished his job, he went home, but on the way he found an unconscious girl. Then Al realized that a monster might attack her. Because of this, he didn't want to leave her in the forest. The next morning, Linnea woke up and she was confused, because she didn't know where she was. She thought Al was a kidnapper who invited her to a ditty party. Al cleared up the misunderstanding and said he is not rapper Drake who would date little girls. He then asked why she was unconscious on Main Road. She told Al that she had to go to the Adventurers Guild to make a request. Al was a gentleman and he offered to take her there. Shortly after, love interest Rory visited Al, and she was shocked to see another girl in Al's house. Rory also learned that the girl had slept in Al's bed, so she got an emotional damage. In the afternoon, Helen found out about the story too, so she asked Al about the girl. He cleared up the misunderstanding and Helen learned that he had found Linnea unconscious in the forest. Then Linnea told them about her problem, that something was odd in her hometown. Suddenly Linnea asked Al if he was strong and Al wanted to help Linnea. He accepted the job and Helen asked Linnea more about her hometown. Al was shocked that she came from Salty Springs, which had the tastiest asparagus. He said that according to rumors, their asparagus tasted like God's food and that even angels would eat it. Following this, she learned that Al was a vegetable freak and she was surprised about this. Also, he offered to help her because he planned to eat a lot of asparagus in Salty Springs. Next, she thanked him for the clothes and she wondered why he was so nice to her. She thought he was trying to force her to pay with her body, and Al was shocked because she thought he was a monster. Then he learned that Linnea's father had told her that men are hungry wolves, and that she should be wary of men. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, she thanked Al for his help. Meanwhile, Rui saw Al holding Linnea's hand and she was disappointed. Next, Al called an Uber and he headed off to Salty Springs. The Uber driver told Al more about Salty Springs and mentioned that they are having a lot of problems at the moment. A few hours later, Al spotted a female orc chasing their carriage. The Uber driver said the orcs weren't a problem, but more started showing up. Al fainted because the orcs forced him to pick up the soap several times. Later he woke up and Al apologized, but Linnea thought he fainted out on purpose to sleep on her laps. Al explained that he wasn't thinking of anything perverted and noticed Linnea giving him a pendant. However, he learned that this was a Riz pendant which was increasing his Riz while driving away ugly girls. Afterwards, Al learned from the super driver that Linnea was a great girl because she took care of him all the time while he was sleeping. Next, Al was stopped at the entrance to Salty Springs. Linnea explained to the guards that Al was a guest of hers, so Al was allowed to enter, but he wondered why the guards used mobs as weapons. Then he looked around the town and he spotted a man selling asparagus skewers. However, Al immediately talked to the guy and asked if he had noticed anything strange about the town. The chef replied that everything was fine and he gave Al a burnt asparagus skewer. Al was shocked by this and asked Linnea if it was normal to eat burned skewers in this town. Next, a vegetable delivery man crashed and Al was worried about the man. Al asked if he was okay, but the man stood up like a zombie. Then the man stepped on a potato and Al planned to confront him. He realized something was strange and let the man go. Suddenly, two unknown people appeared and Al was kidnapped. A few moments later, he learned that the two people who had kidnapped Al had mistaken him for their luggage. In the evening, Al learned that Linnea's family runs a pendant shop. She showed him a Cuban chain that contains the divine protection of the good god. She also suspected that the magic stones were protecting her from becoming a zombie like the other townspeople. Suddenly, Al asked about Linnea's parents and he learned that they had disappeared since the townspeople started acting strangely. The next morning, we see the vendors who have smoked too many moon rocks. Then Lemuru appeared and introduced himself to Al. He learned that Lemuru was the Lord of Salty Spring. Al admired this man because he had made their asparagus famous. Next, Lemuru invited Al to his mansion and Al was grateful for Lemuru's offer. At that moment, Al was mistaken for luggage again and he accepted the invitation. Later on, Linnea told Al that she finds Lemuru's invitation to his mansion suspicious. Al just said they'll find out by going to his dinner tonight. In the evening, Sebastian showed them around the mansion. Al thought that Lemuru was a good person because he was a true asparagus fan. Next, Lemuru greeted his guests in the dining room, and Al immediately asked if he could tell him something about the phenomenon in Salty Springs. Suddenly, Lemuru's soldiers pointed their weapons at Al. Lemuru just smiled and Al began defeating the soldiers. He managed to defeat them with ease and planned to attack Lemuru. When Al tried to attack Lemuru, Linnea stood in front of Lemuru to protect him. Al was confused and Lemuru said to Linnea that she had done a good job. Suddenly, the demon Vritra appeared and he planned to make Al his personal slave. Vritra thought he was the top chi and planned to rule the whole world. He told Al that he had a dark dragon ball and that it was causing the townspeople to do stupid things. Also, he said that he had heard the rumors from Al about how he defeated Romeo. Because of this, he wanted Al as his slave so that the other demons would follow him. Following this, Linnea apologized because she felt guilty about luring Al to this city. The reason she went along with the plan was because her parents were taken hostage. Al wasn't mad at her because on their trip to Salty Springs he learned that Linnea was a kind-hearted girl. Suddenly, Demon Vrita planned to use the Dark Dragon Ball to make Al to his slave. At that moment, Linnea remembered the good times she had had with Al. She realized it was wrong and asked him to run away. Suddenly, he used a dangerous stone that he had found in the forest a few days before. As a result, a huge explosion occurred and the ground shook. Al said to Vritra that he is not a top G and proved that he is just a bottom G. In addition, he said that his friends had destroyed the source of the Dark Dragon Ball. Then we learned that Al was never mistaken for luggage because it was his two girls who kidnapped him. They discovered that the source of the power was in the statue and made a plan to overpower the demon. Afterwards, Al told Vritra to give up and that his friends had saved Linnea's parents. Vritra laughed and he planned to take Lemuru hostage. Al couldn't forgive the demon for wanting to kill a genius of asparagus. Suddenly, Al showed the demon freshly harvested asparagus from Salty Spring. He stuffed it into Lemuru's mouth and said that delicious vegetables can do miracles. As a result, Lemuru came back to his senses and he began to cry with joy. After Lemuru was rescued, Al beat the demon and he flew out of the mansion like Team Rocket. The next morning, Linnea thanked Al for his help. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and his girls were jealous. Al blushed and Linnea said that she also plans to visit him sometimes to get a taste of his secret vegetable sauce. A few weeks passed and Al harvested his tomatoes. He loved looking at his vegetable fields and couldn't get enough of them. Then we see Ruri, who regularly helped Al harvest the vegetables. The other girls also helped because they all planned to become his wives. Suddenly, Fel noticed that the other two girls were wearing the same pendants. Helen and Ruri told Fel that they received the pendants from Al as a gift. Additionally, she found out about Linnea, and she was angry because Al was always such a womanizer. However, Fel was worried that he would soon find another new girl, and the others tried to calm Fel down. Suddenly, Al screamed like a little girl, and the girls wondered why. They immediately ran to him, thinking that a demon had attacked him. But the reason Al screamed like a little girl was because a bushkiller was sucking out the vitamins of his beloved vegetables. Al needed to eat a Snickers because he transformed into Fire Lord Ozai from The Last Airbender. In the afternoon, Al and his friends sold vegetables in the royal capital. A woman wanted to buy tomatoes, and Al gave her some asparagus as a gift. A few moments later, Al's adventurer friend Jake showed up, and he was also a big fan of Al's freshly harvested vegetables. Al gave him a cabbage, and Jake invited Al to have a drink with his friends. Unfortunately, Al was very busy and he politely declined. Then King Magus appeared, who wanted to buy radish. Besides, he asked Al when he planned to join his family, but Al wasn't really interested and King Magus convinced him by promising to give him more farm fields. Ruri stopped him, but fell through a potato at Ruri, accidentally hitting Al. However, Al began to dream of an angel who spoke to him. She tried to tell him something important about his life, so Al tried to stop her from leaving. Back in reality, he was surprised to see King Magus in front of him. A few hours later, Al thanked his girls for their help to sell the vegetables. Following this, he planned to use the money to buy herbicide, and he started laughing evilly. He wanted to destroy his enemy and his girls wished him good luck. Then we see Reeks, who was handing out some letters, and he saw Al on the way home. He was shocked to see Al because he was acting like a villain. Reeks learned about Al's problem and didn't inquire further. Then they discovered that a little girl was being attacked by some strange-looking weirdos. Al intervened and told the criminals to stop forcing her to join a diddler party. The Diddy Gang got angry and tried to beat up Al. But Al played the Uno reverse card, so the Diddy Gang were defeated and the leader ran away like a fruity biscuit. However, Al asked if she was okay and he realized she was a demon. Reeks knew the girl's name and said they were the same demon kind. Al learned that her name was Yuria and that she is the daughter of the Demon King. Afterwards, Yuria learned that Al was a kind-hearted person, and she asked Al for help. She asked him to save all the demons, and Al wanted to know the details. However, she told Al that her babysitter Volpidoma came to her room. He said that it was no longer safe for them here and teleported her to another country. Reeks said that it would take 3 days to reach the Demon King's territory, but Al decided to help Yuria. Then he asked Reeks to take care of his bushkiller problem on his fields. A few moments later, Al transformed into a Konoha ninja and he was running on water. Yuria was scared because she couldn't swim, but Al told her to chill. After 2 hours, they arrived at the demon territory, and she thanked Al for the help. When Al saw her smile, he was glad he decided to help. because Yuria reminded him of his childhood friend Ilvia. Next, Volpedoma appeared and Yuria was happy to see him. Al noticed he was acting strange and asked Yuria to stand behind him. Suddenly, Volpedoma attacked with a dot of destruction spell, but Al took Yuria and dodged immediately. Yuria was confused and Volpedoma attacked again. He didn't stop and Al tried to direct the attention to himself. Suddenly, Volpedoma tried to hit Yuria and Al jumped in front of her to protect her. Al understood that Yuria's babysitter was being controlled by a powerful person. Following this, Al planned to knock his enemy out, but his attack failed. Al didn't give up and he managed to kick his opponent in the face. After Volpedoma was knocked out, Yuria wondered why Volpedoma was trying to kill them. Suddenly, Volpedoma stood up again and began to cast a powerful spell. That's when Al's mom showed up and beat him up. Lushika told Al that Reeks had told her about Al's side quest. Yuria was shy and she hid behind Al. Afterwards, Al learned that Yuria's babysitter is one of the demon's strongest magic users. But most of the time he is always by her side and looks after her like a big brother. Next they arrived at the Demon King Castle and Yuria was shocked because many soldiers were lying on the ground injured and she was worried. Lushika suspected that they most likely fought among themselves. Then Yuria ran into the royal palace to find her father, but she found her father on the ground, seriously injured. Al looked after Yuria and he was sure that her dad was still alive. Then he discovered a soldier who regained consciousness. Suddenly Lushika tried to kill the Demon King's daughter. Al stopped her, knowing she wasn't his mother. Afterwards, he said that he knew from the beginning that she was not his mother. The reason for this was that Al always gets injured when he meets his mother. Yuria was confused and Lushika was impressed that Al hadn't fallen for it. Suddenly, Al was called Oni-chan and she transformed into her true form. Al sensed a powerful aura and was shocked to see Ilvia. He couldn't believe it because he thought she had died. While Al didn't understand how Ilvia was still alive, she did a 360 and said that she had put on her favorite outfit for the day. Al was sure she had died from malnutrition. Suddenly, Ilvia said that she was alive thanks to the great evil god and she plans to destroy the world. Afterwards, she showed that she was capable of using the power of the god of destruction. Ilvia aimed her destruction ball at Yuria, but Al immediately reacted to save her. However, Ilvia caused a massive explosion that almost blew away the entire castle. Al was shocked by the enormous power that the evil god had given her. Then Ilvia said that she was impressed with Al, that he was able to dodge her attack even though the power of the great evil god inside of his body was still sealed away. Al was confused and Ilvia asked him if he had ever wondered why his status was so high. She explained to him that his unique skill was that of the evil god. Then Al said that he had never met the evil god. Ilvia replied that he had met him before, when he was a child, and she planned to turn Al to the dark side as if he were Luke Skywalker. However, Yuria managed to bring Al back to his senses and Ilvia became angry. She began choking Yuria and planned to kill her for calling Al Oni-chan. Al wanted to save her, but Ilvia cast a spell on him. Yuria understood how dangerous Ilvia is and asked Al to run away. When Ilvia wanted to kill Yuria, Al tried to prevent it. At that moment, his pendant activated and time stopped. He was confused because everything around him stopped moving. Following this, the good god appeared and she introduced herself. She explained to Al that she was able to communicate with him thanks to the pendants he wears. Afterwards, she told Al that she will erase the evil god's power in his body and give him her power. Al was confused and the evil god tried to stop it. Then the good god told him that she will transfer some of her powers to him. As a result, he felt a new power in his body. He felt that he could use the Ultra Instinct and the good god wished him good luck. When time started running again, Ilvia felt that Al had the power of the good god. He thought he was cooking, but he got smelt because there were only a few plants growing on the floor. Ilvia planned to make her move, but the plants stopped her before she could kill Yuria. Al hadn't failed after all, and Yuria was safe. Despite everything, Ilvia managed to free herself with ease and she made fun of Al's skill. After that, she took out a sword and she attacked Al with full force. Al created a wall of bush killers to protect him. Next, Ilvia was tied up again and this time she couldn't free herself. Meanwhile, Volpedoma appeared and he attacked with a purple Kamehameha wave. Afterwards, Volpedoma went to Yuria and he was happy that she was unhurt. Also, they thought they had defeated Ilvia, but Volpedoma's attack caused no damage. However, she launched a counterattack and Volpedoma was hit. She was faster than a speed star and planned to kill Volpedoma, but Al asked her to stop and she listened to Al for some reason. Afterwards, she said that she found it boring here, and she disappeared. A few moments later, Volpedoma wanted to know what that meant. He thought that Al was one of the evil ones, but Yuria explained that Al had saved her. Meanwhile, the Demon King also recovered and stopped Volpadoma. Afterwards, he also wanted to know what that meant, and wanted to hear an explanation from Al. Al replied that Ilvia was his little sister and cleared up the misunderstanding. The Demon King planned to help Al from now on if he finds information about the evil god. Then Yuria was sad that Al was going home. She hugged him, but Volpadoma was angry and immediately pulled her away from Al. Al said he wasn't into little kids because his nickname is Rizgod and not P. Diddy. In the following days, we see Albie, and she was told to show up in Fel's room. She already suspected that Fal was planning to go out to have fun. Fal apologized for always forcing Albie to play her body double while she is enjoying her time with her favorite farmer Hal. As Fal walked out of the room, Albie began to smile evilly. Meanwhile, Hal was in his home village and he was deep in thought. He thought about his beloved sister's words that he had already met the evil god. At that moment, he remembered the nightmare he had when he found a ruin with Testa. Next, he visited his buddy Testa and Al told him about his latest adventure. Al also asked his friend if he remembered the day they were looking for a treasure. He learned that Testa didn't know anything helpful and changed the subject. Testa told Al that Gotham City tomatoes tasted great. Afterwards, Al invited him to visit him in the royal capital, but Testa was very busy with his fisherman job. However, Al went back to the royal capital, but he hated the forest. Suddenly, a female orc appeared behind him, chasing him. Al didn't want to pick up the soap and hit the orc with full force in the stomach. Al was shocked that his attack didn't work and ran away. He was lucky. However, he was very lucky because Jake, Lamia, and Luke showed up and saved him in the forest. Lamia noticed that Al had become weaker and he was surprised himself. He later told Helen and Rory about it, and they also found it strange that he couldn't defeat an orc. Helen wanted to see Al's stats and they found that his stats have gone down. Al suspected it was because he had lost the evil god's unique skill. Suddenly, Helen asked if he had any idea why his stats had dropped. Al didn't want to worry his girls and didn't tell them about the evil god. Then she tried to cheer him up and said that his stats were still higher than most adventurers. After that, Reeks showed up with a letter for Al. Lushika wrote something very important to her son, and she teased Rory and Helen before because she suspected that they were reading the letter too. Then Al continued reading and Lushika wrote to Al that he doesn't always have to bear the burden and can ask her for help at any time. Finally, she wrote that she loves him more than anything. Later on, Fel showed up at the guild and she was glad to see Al. She wanted to spend time with Al, but the other two girls had the same plan. The three rivals began fighting for Al's attention again. Then Al started to enjoy the time with his friends. He still wondered what Ilvia and the evil god were all about, but he knew that he had to continue to work hard as a farmer for the sake of his friends and his country.